This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life, where you live. Welcome to the North Georgia Life Podcast. It is Jake again, and I have a cool episode for you today. We are on campus at the University of North Georgia in Dahlonega with one of what I think is one of the best kept secrets, possibly in the state of Georgia, but most certainly in North Georgia. We are at the planetarium. There is a legit planetarium on campus in Dahlonega, as well as you'll hear about in the podcast. There is an observatory with a telescope that is in the process of being, the whole complex is in the process of being rebuilt in the coming year with brand new telescopes coming in 2020. And if you like to explore literally and metaphorically new horizons, but really would like just a cool outing for a Friday night that's just different than going out to a chain restaurant, what better way to run up to Dahlonega, run down to Dahlonega, I guess, depending on where you're coming from, grab dinner in town, and run over to the planetarium for one of their shows, and then run over to the observatory, which is just a couple miles off campus. You'll hear about just some really neat things today that are going on campus, and we hope that bringing stuff like this to you really adds some value and variety and creates some memories for you and your family. Don't forget, you can find us on Facebook, North Georgia Life Podcast. You can email us directly at northgeorgialifepodcast@gmail.com if you have ideas, suggestions on places we should go, people we should talk to in the North Georgia region. We are in the process of getting the website up and running, so you'll have a central point for any contact or episode information online. And we are on Google Play, iTunes, and Spotify. So subscribe to us, and you'll get new episodes as we launch them. With that, we will get started. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to the North Georgia Life Podcast. I'm going to confess a little something that most of you don't know. I'm a little bit of a space geek. Some of you don't know that I have any geek in me, but super excited when I got an opportunity to come here today. We're at the planetarium at University of North Georgia in Dahlonega. And as a means of introduction, as where my space geek came from, so I went to school, some of you know, I went to school at Clemson University, and when I was a freshman in Clemson, I had to figure out a science. And at the time, Clemson had 5 sciences. So you had chemistry, biology, physics, geology, and astronomy. So chemistry I knew was out. Chemistry was the only class in all of my school years that I ever got a D in. And I got a C with a tutor the next semester. So chemistry was definitely out. Physics was interesting, but I'm not a math person, so physics was kind of not my strong suit. Biology I had done, maybe, but college is all about having new course opportunities, new learning experience, and stuff like that. So I'm like, I don't want to do that. Geology was interesting, but it was kind of interesting like, the beet salad at the neighborhood picnic. It looks neat. Somebody else can try it, but not for me. So then I defaulted to astronomy because I've seen Star Wars, Star Trek. I thought it was neat. Just think space is fascinating. Had no idea what I was getting into. It was far more complicated than I imagined. However, I don't want to say I fell in love with it because I wasn't that good at it, but it was so interesting to me that I worked my butt off in the class as a means of segueing through my first semester in college. Well, I'm going to bring you to finals week. Now, finals week, we all know, is your whole week is thrown off. You're not on your normal schedule. And so I had written down on a note card when my finals were. That week, I think it was on a Tuesday. I went to the gym a little later than I normally did. Came back to the dorm. I was in the overflow housing that semester, which was the fraternity quad, which is over on the kind of the back side of the campus by the FIKE, the recreation center. So I got and showered, was in my room, had the door open, and the guys across the hall from me, Chris and Freddie, were local South Carolina country boys, and they were just some of the best people you could ever ask for living across the street. And Chris happened to be in my astronomy class. And so I'm in there, in my room getting dressed. Chris starts unlocking the door like he had just gotten back from class. And he says, "Hey, Jake," he said, "what color test did you have?" I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, astronomy, what color test did you have? I was like, Chris, the astronomy final's at like 4. And Chris has a laugh like, the only thing I can compare it to is it was Barry Sanders, the Hall of Fame running back for the Detroit Lions. If you don't know Barry Sanders' laugh, you need to just go on YouTube and look up Barry Sanders Hall of Fame induction speech. He has a laugh that sounds like it's coming from another person. It is entirely different than his normal voice, and Chris had the same laugh. So I told Chris, I'm like, Chris, the final's at 4. I got it right here on above my bed. And he goes, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And at that point, I start kind of the cold sweat. And I look over above my bed, and it says astronomy, 1 p.m. And I look back, and it says astronomy, 1 p.m. And I look back, and I'm like, oh, no. And he's just over there just laughing, shaking his head, because our professor, P.J. Flowers, I'll never forget this guy's name, he had told us every minute you're late is 1 point off your final. And at this point, I'm like 70 minutes late. And because we're talking with a physics person today, I want to make sure my math was right. I went on Google Earth. It's basically about a half mile from my dorm room to the front doors of Daniel Hall, which is right next to the library where the astronomy class was. I did a dead wind sprint from the 3rd floor. I mean, I threw my jeans on, had the biggest wedgie of my life, streaking across Clemson University, past the reflection pond. I went into the Daniel Hall astronomy final like someone had shot a rhinoceros out of a cannon into the auditorium, which at that point probably sat 200 or 300, and there was maybe, 60, 80 students left at that point. And I'll never forget the look of Dr. Flowers and his TA that was up on stage. They just looked at me like, who are you? And I get up there, and I'm like, can't speak because I'm so winded. I mean, I have been running as fast as I've ever run in my life. And out of 200 or 300 students, again, math is not my forte, but I had worked my butt off. I was like one of 8 students that had an A going into the final. And suffice to say, the moral of the story is I didn't get an A. But they looked at my name, looked at my grade, and there was like this collective gasp between the two of them, like, oh, you idiot. Thankfully, they only took off 25 points, but it was so fascinating to me in preparation to that final. I knew there was an extra credit section, and so part of the extra credit was like knowing constellations. And so I was like freehanding constellations in the library the week before because I knew like I'm going to get an A in a science class in college, and I couldn't get an A in high school. By that as a means of where my little geek session comes from, it was one of the most interesting classes and courses that I took in college. And when I found out that UNG has a planetarium and observatory here in Dahlonega, this was probably, 6-8 years ago. I came as soon as I found out. I've moved a couple times since then, still in the North Georgia region, but life has just kind of gotten away from me a little bit in terms of coming back. But I can promise you this is a great environment for people, not only student body, but also the greater North Georgia community, to have exposure to something that is really, really neat. Most people in the country have nothing like this anywhere close by to them, and this is literally in our backyard. So as a means of introduction, I want to introduce our guest today. Her name is Leslie Simonton Coogan. Leslie's been here for 3 years. She is the planetarium director and also lecturer at UNG Dahlonega. Leslie, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Tell us a little bit about like where you're from. You obviously, as I just mentioned, you have a pretty unique special position in our region itself, not just in the college as a whole, but where does Leslie come from? How does Leslie find herself in Dahlonega, Georgia?
Yeah, so I mostly lived in sort of the Michigan, Ohio area. I went to undergraduate at Albion College in Michigan. It's a really small private school, and then I got a PhD in University of Toledo, Ohio, and that was in 2015. And then for about a year, I worked at a couple different community colleges, and then was looking for more full-time work, and eventually got this position. I was looking at a lot of sort of teaching positions, but I also really like public outreach for science, and so planetarium was perfect for that.
Perfect, yeah.
So when I found this job, I was pretty excited, and so it was a big move to sort of come from Ohio to Georgia.
Yeah, so
but,
you moved from Toledo down here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you know anybody in Georgia at the time?
Nope.
Nope.
No. No. I did. I actually did live in Georgia for a couple years when I was a kid. Most of my childhood was in Michigan, but my parents were in the military before when I was younger, and so we actually had 2 years where we lived in Fort Stewart.
Okay.
So I did live in southern Georgia for a little bit beforehand, but it was a long time ago.
I'm sure you were glad to get out of southern Georgia. It's a little warm.
Yeah, definitely different. My family was like asking me if I was going to be around alligators and like kind of in the swamps here, and I was like, no, we're in the mountains. Yeah. It's very different.
No, there's no alligators. Yeah, just at the zoo. This really is a unique position, and what you were looking for, this kind of fit all that pretty neatly. Yeah.
There's not very many of this types of jobs across the country. There's only about 3, I think, that I interviewed for that were kind of similar, like teaching and planetariums. And so I went with this one.
How did your interest in space, planetarium, astronomy, that sort of thing, how did that start?
Well, probably when I was about in middle school, I had a teacher that basically showed us a video that was, I want to say it was called 99 Worlds and Counting. It was some sort of special, maybe a PBS special type of thing, but it was about the moons of the outer solar system. And I just thought it was really cool, especially I felt like my younger childhood, I just maybe learned about some planets. I thought mostly things were kind of dead out in space and there wasn't much interesting. And then we saw this video that talked about all these moons that I didn't even know existed, and realized that kind of just that the universe was a lot bigger than I thought it was. And I kind of went through school looking at more physics for most of my education, but always sort of came back to astronomy for like projects and research. And it was always sort of, this is really cool. Yeah. When you kind of start to get into some of the realm of what you're doing, it's just amazing. It's really our known knowledge of the cosmos has expanded greatly, probably in the last 20, 30 years. Definitely.
I should have done more research on this. I think I just saw they just did an upgrade to the Hubble recently. Am I imagining this? They had to fix something on the Hubble because the Hubble's actually been going for a while. I mean, it launched in 1990. Yeah. So it's an old telescope now, basically. It's really only lasted as long as it has because it's one of the only telescopes they ever put into space that was serviceable. Right. So they actually were able to continue to like put new instruments on it and make updates. Although I believe those missions have ended, but they did something where they were trying to fix a part that was no longer working, and I think they got it working again. Maybe that's what I remember hearing. Can you give us a little short history on the planetarium, the observatory? Yeah, well, I mean, I've been here 3 years, so my amount knowledge is mostly what people have told me before from before I got here. But the planetarium is currently, we're in a building called the Health and Natural Science Building. But before that, we had a little standalone building before they built this larger building for housing more of the sciences. And the standalone building was just a little bit further down the hill that we're on. And that was there for at least quite a while, at least from when the planetarium with its current name, it's the George E. Coleman Senior Planetarium, and that was named in like 91, I believe. Okay. We got a donation from George Coleman from the area to sort of build the planetarium, and so that building was where we were, and then in 2002 they finished this building, so they kind of just moved the planetarium over to this building. Before that, I believe we had a facility, or we had a projector at some point that was, I think, in the admissions building with the gold steeple, and that might have been the projector behind you right now. Our first projector that I want to say was from the 50s, although I've actually been having trouble tracking down anyone with information about this projector because it's old enough that just anyone who saw it when it was operating is no longer around. This was the first one we ever had. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty cool. If anybody knows, it says Spitz Laboratories Inc. from Yorkland, Delaware. If we have any Spitz people from Yorkland, Delaware, call us.
Fitz still
Yeah.
makes a lot of planetarium equipment. That's a
neat.
company that's big on that. Yeah, but this was an analog one, so it has like a star ball that just projects pinpoints of light for the stars. Whereas just before I started, we got a digital projector, which actually can show like full video, and we can do things like fly through space.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who have not been here, while the planetarium room that we're in is not huge, it's a legit planetarium. Like and the fact that it is 46, is that the seating? In
Yeah,
here?
we can see 46 people. Yeah, the dome that's above your heads is about 30 feet wide.
Yeah. It's been a few years, but I have been to a show here, and maybe I'm not your average person because I've told you I think this stuff is pretty neat, but everybody that's been here that I know of has had a great time. It's just a really neat experience to get out and do something different on a weekend or something like that. The NASA All-Sky Fireball Network. Is that something that it seemed like it was a network of places like this across the country that are working together to track space. Is that?
Yeah, so we basically are one of the stations essentially for this vast network of cameras. They're set up to catch meteors. Okay. Essentially in the sky, and they're just little tiny pieces of rock or dust even out in space. They're usually left over from sort of comets traveling around, and when those hit the atmosphere, they burn up, causing shooting stars, bright streak of light, and they can happen sort of anywhere across the sky at any time. And so in order to catch when they happen, there's a network of cameras that are just constantly monitoring the sky for them. And we have one of the cameras out at our observatory. Now, I'll admit that it's mostly other people at NASA who monitor the network, but you can, if you look up that program, you can find data where you can actually go look at some of the streaks, or if you see something in the sky, you can try to track it down yourself with the network, because NASA's stuff is almost always all free online to access the data and stuff.
That's neat.
Yeah. That camera's out at our observatory, and the observatory is actually about 4 miles away from where the planetarium is, off campus, so it's a lot darker out there.
Right.
We're actually getting a new facility though, so they're currently about to knock down what's already out there.
When is this happening?
So we're starting construction in October, and it'll be finished by next summer. Okay. And it'll be a brand new facility with 2 telescopes that are going to be pretty big ones.
So they're going to be new, or are they using the one that's there?
No, they're going to be brand new.
Oh,
so
wow.
we actually even already have the telescopes. We just need to have the building actually built. But yeah, they're 2 brand new ones. Our current telescopes are usually measured in the width of the mirror, and the current one is a 16-inch wide mirror, and then the new ones we're getting are going to be a 26 and a 28-inch mirrors. So they're going to be much bigger.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So this is, again, just a hidden gem to so many people, because you don't just have the planetarium that the public has access to as far as coming to see some of these shows and stuff like that, but the observatory as well. People that, when the observatory is open, can go look through a telescope that, again, most people in the country have no access to anything like this anywhere around them, much less open to the public kind of thing. What is some of the programming that is available to the greater community in the area, but not just planetarium, but observatory as well, as far as what's out there and available?
Yeah, so our regular programming in the planetarium is just this Friday night shows. They start at 8 o'clock. Our doors open at 7:30, and those are totally free. No tickets or reservations for the planetarium shows. And the planetarium's indoors, so that's also rain or shine. And then the observatory, normally people go out to the observatory after planetarium shows. They're open usually Monday through Saturday, but prefer the public to come out on Friday nights after the planetarium show. Gotcha. And that's opening after sunset for usually a couple hours. Okay. They have a Facebook page where they update their status, because they need to also take the weather into account. Yeah. And so they're actually, the name of the observatory is North Georgia Astronomical Observatory. That's what they're on under Facebook
Okay.
and on Google Maps when you're trying to find them. However, as I mentioned, they're actually constructing the facility and starting actually now, because we've got to clear out the rooms and then demolish the building. So starting now, the observing for until next summer is going to be on campus.
Okay.
Nearby where the planetarium is, the campus has what's called the drill field. It's a very large, just open field, and so we're going to have telescopes set up in the evenings.
Cool.
At the very least, again, on Friday nights after the planetarium shows,
Yeah.
and probably other nights too. Astronomy students here have a lot of labs where they have to go use telescopes, so
Yeah.
we'll just be porting some telescopes out onto that field
Okay.
for a while till we finish the new building.
Okay. And for those of you who are not sure what building we're in, we're on the, I guess that would be the upper side of the campus when you're coming up Crown Mountain from Highway 60, the Gainesville area. You're going to go basically kind of into town, make a roundabout past the old jail, come back past the Holly, and then the Health and Science building is up on the upper right-hand side on Sunset. If someone is interested in potentially pursuing something like this is just a unique position, but a really interesting position. Any nuggets of wisdom that from your journey and how to secure a job like this, how to prepare yourself best for a job like this?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is kind of a unique job. I kind of came to this job from sort of the academic side. I got a PhD in physics, and then was sort of doing astronomy research, and then that led me to sort of more the public outreach side. Some people that work in planetariums come from sort of a totally different background. I've even met people at groups that meet up that are sort of more like AV background people.
Okay.
Even someone that was working from theater. So you can kind of come at planetariums from a lot of different angles, I guess. But for people doing something like I did, they would probably be looking at trying to do some astronomy research, and then maybe that would lead them into working at a planetarium. So that would be sort of studying a lot of science. Physics was my degree, but some people in astronomy do other science degrees as well. Sometimes people will do geology or chemistry or something like that, especially people who go work at NASA. A lot of times they have backgrounds in engineering or geology or something like that. But yeah, so just essentially studying those fields, and then when you're looking at research projects, just keeping an eye out for opportunities where you can get the astronomy side of things. And a lot of times there are actual classes in astronomy to take as well, and some places offer like astronomy degrees. I typically don't recommend that, like when students are interested in this, I typically don't recommend an astronomy degree though, because when you have a degree in something more like physics, you just have a more versatile background. If you didn't find a job at a planetarium or you dreamed, you could just go do something else that also uses your physics degree.
Yep. If you could transport to anywhere in space and science had figured out, technology had figured out how to sustain you there and back, where would you go?
Oh my gosh. So many places. No. Probably one of the moons in the outer solar system. Probably either Enceladus or Titan, maybe. Those are both moons of Saturn. And Enceladus has jets of water that shoot out through cracks of ice, because it has oceans of liquid water that are covered with ice. And we have photos from the Cassini mission around Saturn of the water shooting out from the ice.
Wow.
And then Titan is the only moon in the solar system with a substantial atmosphere. So it has a thick atmosphere. It's even mostly nitrogen, which is the same as our atmosphere, except they don't have, Titan doesn't have a lot of oxygen, so you'd still need something to help you breathe.
Yeah.
But and it's very cold, so you need something to keep you warm. But yeah, it has this thick atmosphere, and it has a methane cycle, like we have a water cycle. So it rains methane, and there's lakes of it, and it's actually a big deal to have like a liquid in like a lake form on the surface of a planet or moon.
Yeah, anywhere.
Yeah. So it would be really cool to just see Titan close up. I think eventually there are plans in the works to like send more. We've had one probe touch down on the surface of Titan. I think there's plans to send more things to Titan, maybe even like a little submarine to go around in the methane lakes.
Wow.
But
see if there's any fish.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite parts of what you do? Is there anything that stands out that's year to year, day to day, just kind of the thing you look forward to most?
Yeah, I do a lot of kids shows for school groups that come through for field trips in the planetarium, and at the end of the shows, I always have question and answer sessions, and I love doing the questions with the kids. I usually get the most questions from about second graders.
Yeah.
But it's really fun because they're always very excited, and they have a lot of questions. You know, sometimes when I have more adult or college student audiences and I ask if people have questions, you just get crickets.
Nobody wants to
Dead silence.
Nobody wants to ask a stupid question.
Yeah. Well, the little kids aren't scared of that,
Yeah,
so
the
they
little kids
just
aren't
raise their
scared.
hands right away and have really good questions.
In that realm, anything that is just kind of your best memory from your time here so far?
Probably some of the questions from the kids and how excited they are afterwards. I get a lot of very small kids that ask about black holes and how they work, and those are always very challenging to answer in a way that they can understand. And so when they seem to understand it at the end, that's always very rewarding. And occasionally I get kids that'll like hug me or something after the show, so that's always really fun.
I think I remember reading something recently about the discovery of the first black hole that was definitive. Am I imagining this?
Well, so just this last year, we got the closest picture, I'm using air quotes, picture of a black hole. You can't actually take a photo of a black hole because light can't
black.
escape.
Yeah.
Well, it's if light touches it, it's trapped there. So if light like tries to bounce off of it, it can't. It'll just stay there and be stuck forever. And so you can't see it, but they took a picture of the material right around a black hole, sort of the closest in we've ever seen material from right around it. And that was just released this year.
Okay.
It was a supermassive black hole
Yeah.
in a galaxy called M87.
Cool.
But yeah, so that was really exciting. It was often described as a shadow of a black hole because basically in the middle of the material was just sort of an empty space.
We talked about some of the things that are available to the public. You got me super excited. We have one of our kids is a Harry Potter fanatic, and one of the reasons we wanted to get in here and get this available to our audience as quick as possible is because we have a couple events on the upcoming weekends that are pretty neat. Talk about them and then any of the other shows that we have coming up over the fall semester, anything that you know that's maybe a big deal planned for 2020 already, but certainly this fall.
Yeah, so basically August 30th and September 6th, the next 2 Fridays, there's going to be a show called Harry Potter Astronomy. And it's basically where I take a look at the night sky and we look for some of the characters in the Harry Potter books. I also talk a little bit about the astronomy class that's in the Harry Potter books as well. And so I think it's a really fun show, and it's going to show 2 times each of the nights. It's going to be at 7 and 8 o'clock, so that hopefully if we get a lot of people, there's plenty of chance for people to see it.
Yep.
And then after that 2 weekends of that, we're going to start a show called The Sun, Our Living Star. And so that's most of our regular shows. We have sort of a video that plays for about 25 minutes at the start. And so we'll have a video about the sun then. And then after the video's over, then I show the night sky and I point out constellations. Sometimes we fly out to planets, or I describe recent astronomy discoveries. And so the next show starting September 13th will be The Sun, Our Living Star.
And they're on Friday nights. It always the same time.
In the winter, I haven't set the date yet, but over the winter we sometimes move it half an hour earlier to 7:30 because it gets dark so much earlier. So look out for that, I guess, in the winter, and we'll post it to our website, which is ung.edu/planetarium. So all the schedule and updates get posted there as well. And you mentioned 2020. Another big event that we participate in is the Dahlonega Science Festival. And so that we've done it 2 years. The festival's happened 2 years in a row now, and we're going to have a third, and that's going to be March 6th through 8th in 2020.
Okay.
So it's the first full weekend in March. And the planetarium always participates, and we do shows. I usually run the Harry Potter show then as well as another new one. So we've got a few different planetarium shows that happen then, and there's a ton of events. Last year we had an escape room that was all science themed.
Cool.
And we always bring in speakers as well. So it's going to be probably a similar, we're still in the planning stages right now, but it'll be a similar big event with a lot of different science themed activities.
Awesome. And all of the information as far as events, times, and everything is on that website you mentioned?
Yes, yeah, the website is on there, and we even have we have several pages on our menu. One of the pages also links to that science festival information as well.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That website one more time.
UNG.edu/planetarium.
Okay. Any meteor showers? I know there's shooting stars all the time, but I also know there's times where there's something's coming through and there's a higher probability of having meteor showers. Anything coming up as we're finally starting to take a break from the summer heat, you're aware of that people can go outside and just get a look at a higher probability night of shooting stars?
I think we just had one last week.
Okay.
Here in August, but there are some really good ones that will be coming up in November and December. I always mix up some of the names because they're all named after constellations, so sometimes the names blur together for me a little bit. But there's some big ones that happen in November and December, and they're usually called meteor showers because there's a ton of meteors all. Usually it kind of peaks on one night, but it'll usually be several nights where you could see an increased number. And it's usually because Earth is sort of passing through a debris trail that's left behind by a comet. And so there's a lot of little bits of things out in space. You can't like you said, you can't have meteors technically any time, but it's during those times that we're going through sort of a known debris trail.
Right.
Yeah, and then you'll have more of them, and they're pretty fun to watch. You do have to sit outside for a while, but the nice thing about it is you actually don't need a telescope for a meteor shower because you never know where one's going to suddenly streak across the sky. So you need a broad view. You have to just sort of relax in a chair and look at the whole sky. Yep,
and put your phone away because your phone will mess your eyes up.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We're going to transition to what I call our lightning round, which is a question that has nothing to do with anything. I just think random questions are fun. Okay, so today's lightning round question. If you were going to run for political office, which of these two platforms would you be most likely to have as part of your campaign? Half-day Fridays or 4 weeks of vacation a year?
Oh. I'd probably choose 4 weeks of vacation a year because I always work Friday nights here at the planetarium. So even when the university has things like a half day on Friday, I often don't get to take it. So I'd want 4 weeks of vacation a year. Yeah.
I would share that as well. I would vote for you. What's one of your favorite maybe hidden gems or places you like to go or things you like to do in the area?
Well, occasionally I've gone to hiking stuff. I mean, I don't know if they're hidden gems because I mean people know about them, but I like some of the hiking spots. Amicalola Falls is obviously a really cool one. I did Raven Cliff Falls one time. Yeah, that was really neat. The end of the trail, there's like the waterfall that's between two rocks. Yeah. Like hidden in between two rocks, and so that was really cool. And I don't know if Atlanta counts as North Georgia, but I like the aquarium a lot too. Obviously not hidden, but
not hidden. But they did a good job on the aquarium for sure. And can you give us just one more time how people find out about the events, the shows, things like that, that are going on?
Yeah, so if people want to find out, for the planetarium, the website is the best spot to look. We do update the website, so that will change for the different shows that are coming up or happening. For the observatory, they do mostly use Facebook. I don't believe they have an Instagram yet, but that would be under North Georgia Astronomical Observatory.
Okay.
And yeah, so they usually update the Facebook in order to say if they're opening for the night or not. Because the telescopes are run by students here at the university that we train, students that have taken astronomy and then have trained to use the telescopes. So, yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for your time. And like I said, our whole deal with why we do this is to give our community, our audience, exposure to hidden gems like this in our area, and hopefully build involvement, interest, and something like this. Obviously, education as part of that. And so we hope that you will come out and just spend some time out at the planetarium once the observatory is back open. Leslie, thanks for your time, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thanks.
This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live.